Hello guys and welcome back. So now in this video what we're gonna do is we're gonna add sprinting and also we're gonna play animations as well. Alright, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna click on animator, and as you can see the player doesn't have any controller, or you can say animator controller for now, so that's why it is empty. Okay, so first of all we're gonna create a animator controller for the player. So in the animations right here, let's go ahead and create a animator controller. Name this as player, then click on player and drag and drop this controller in there in the animator component. Alright, the avatar is already attached. Now once you do this, now if you click on animator, as you can see, when the player is selected, it shows this entry, any state, and exit. Alright, right here click the mouse right click and then create a new blend tree. Alright, we can name this as movement, then go in here, click on this blend tree. Alright, we can make this blend tree a 2D free form directional. Alright, it needs parameters, so let's create parameters right here. We will create a float parameter, name it as vertical, and then select the first one, double click on it and rename it to horizontal. Alright, then in the first one select horizontal, in the second one select vertical, and then click right here on this add new motion field, add 3 motion fields like this. Then in the animations folder, open up the locomotions folder, and in here you will find these 4 animations. Alright, one is jumping, we're just gonna leave jumping. Alright, we're just gonna drag and drop the idle, then the standard walk, and then the running. Alright, make the position X of running 0, make the position Y of the standard walk as 0.5, and the running should be 2. Alright, and let's make this vertical 0. Now if we play the animation and increase the horizontal value, as you can see the character walks. Okay, as you can see. Alright, if you increase the vertical value, as you can see on 0.5 or 0.6 the character walks, and when it starts increase the character run, as you can see. Okay, so we have the animations set up right here. Alright, remember that we created these 2 parameters, horizontal and vertical. Now in order to play these animations accordingly to the player movement, we're gonna create a new script. So in scripts player folder, let's create a new C# script by the name of animator manager. Okay, click on player and drag and drop this script right here. So let me first of all minimize that rigid body and capsule collider and then drag and drop it. Move the animator down below as well so that the scripts are on the top. Now let's open up this animator manager script. Okay, now as I told you, we will be adding running, or you can say sprinting, to our player as well, because right now the player can only walk. Okay, we don't play animations, but in the previous video you saw the player can walk around in the environment, and as I told you, in this video we will be adding sprinting and also animations. Alright, so let's first of all add sprinting, and then in the end we're gonna add animations. So for sprinting, in the player movement script, right down below the movement speed, we're gonna add a float by the name of sprinting speed, or you can name it as running speed if you want. Okay, once we have the sprinting speed, then in the handle movement method, what we gonna do now is right here we're gonna cut this line, Okay, cut it, don't remove it, and then before adding this if condition, we need a bool to check if the player is moving or sprinting, or you can say running. So let's name this as movement flags. Alright, in here create a public bool by the name of is moving, and then another public bool by the name of is sprinting. Okay, then right down below we will say if the player is sprinting, then we will paste that code which we copied, and instead of the movement speed we're gonna pass the sprinting speed. Alright, if the player is sprinting. Else, if the player is not sprinting, it means the player is walking. Then in that case, first of all we're gonna check that if the move amount is greater than 0.5. okay, but I think we don't have a move amount on the input manager. Let me check. Okay, we don't have that, so let's quickly add it. Right after this float we will say public float move amount. Alright, I will explain what this move amount is, but let's just first of all type the code, and then after that I'm gonna explain what this move amount is gonna be. Alright, and if you guessed it by the code, then that is good as well. It means you guys are learning something. Alright, so move amount will be equals to mathf.clamp. We will say mathf.absolute. We will pass the horizontal input to it plus the vertical input. So mathf.absolute and then vertical input. Alright. So the purpose of this move amount is basically that it represents how much movement is occurring. Alright, and we calculate that by the horizontal and vertical input. Alright, if the horizontal and vertical inputs are 0, it means no movement. If they are greater than 0, okay, or equals to 0.5 or 6, it means that the character is walking. And if it is 1, or you can say if it is 2, then it means that the character is sprinting, or you can say the character is in full movement. Okay, if I show you visually right here, if you open up this blend tree and click on it, as you can see, we have this parameter right here, horizontal and vertical. Okay, so for example, if the horizontal is 0.5 and the vertical is 0.5, it means if you play the animation, that as you can see, it means the character is walking. Okay, and if they are greater than 1, it means that the character is running. Okay, and we're gonna change this horizontal and vertical parameter values according with our vertical and horizontal input. Okay, we're gonna pass the values from here to this. Okay, so don't worry about that, we're gonna pass that values. So this is all this move amount does. Okay, so once we have the move amount, we can now get back to the player movement, and now we can say that if the move amount is greater than 0.5. Okay, if that is the case, then it means the character is walking. So we will say move direction. Actually, we can just copy this from here and paste it right here, and instead of the sprinting speed, now we're gonna pass the, what was it? It was movement speed. Okay, so we can just pass the movement speed right there. Okay, and we can set the is moving bool to true, and else if the move amount is not greater than 0.5 or less than 0.5, it means either the character is not moving or the character is sprinting. So we're gonna set the is moving to false. Okay, the next thing which we will be doing is right here we will say movement velocity dot y equals to player rigid body dot velocity dot y. Alright, so now you guys will be thinking that we added the sprinting to our player. Okay, so the player should sprint now, but wait, no, the player will not sprint because we don't have a button for sprinting. Okay, in most of the games the player sprint using the shift key when we hold it down. Okay, and since we are using the new input system, so now we need to set up a button for sprinting. So in order to set it, open up the controls folder and open up this player controls for these buttons. Okay, for the actions buttons, for example the sprinting button, jump button, reload button. For that we're going to create a separate action map. So click on plus sign and right here type player actions, because sprinting, jumping, reloading or picking something, that is player actions. Okay, so we need to create a separate action for it. Okay, then also we need right here to rename this action to, for example, name it as sprint. Okay, its type will be button, and then in the binding we can select the keyboard shift button. Okay, and if you want to do it for the joystick, or you can say your controller, Xbox controller or PS controller, then as you know that for that we use on the joystick we use the button east. Okay, so you can use whatever button, but I'm gonna just stick with button east. Okay, so now the sprinting will work on the joystick as well. Okay, this was just to show you how you can add buttons for that joystick if you want. I mean the controllers. Now we can save this since we have the sprint button now. Okay, we now need to read value from that sprint button. So for that you will have to open up the input manager, and on the input manager what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new header. Okay, right here after this, and in here we're gonna say input button flag. Okay, you will say public bool. Let's name this as sprint input. Okay, now in order to read the value from it, we need to type right here player controls dot player actions, since this is inside the player actions now, and we name the button as sprint. Then we will say if that is performed, then plus equals to I equals to greater than sprint input equals to true. Okay, you can now copy it, paste it right down below and set it to false, and right here instead of the performed type cancelled. Okay, then you can move down. Right after the handle movement input, we will now create another method by the name of handle sprinting input, and in this we're gonna check if the sprint input is pressed and the move amount is greater than 0.5, then it means the player is sprinting. So we will say player movement. Alright, we don't have a reference to the player movement script, so let's add a reference to that. Right here we will say player movement, name it as player movement as well. Then right here in the awake we will say player movement equals to get component, get the player movement script. That's it. Once we have the player movement script, we will now say player movement dot is sprinting. We will set it to true because yes, the player is now sprinting. And as you know that when the player is sprinting, I mean this is sprinting. If this is set to true, then the move direction will be then multiplied by the sprinting speed, or else it will be multiplied by the movement speed. Okay, so we will set the is sprinting on the player movement to true, else if that is not the case, then we will set it to false. So let me just copy this line and paste it right here and set it to false. That is all we have to do. Now the last thing which we need to do is right here on the player movement in the handle rotation, right after this target direction dot y equals to 0. After that we will add if condition in which we're going to say if the target direction is greater than vector 3 dot 0, then target direction will be equals to transform dot forward. Okay, that is all we have to do right here. And the reason we did this is this will fix the issue with our player, because in the previous video you saw that when we rotate to any direction, okay, when we are rotating, then it the player facing is in that direction, but when we stop, the player rotates to the front direction. Okay, and as I told you, we will fix that in the previous video, so here we are. Okay, this line will fix that issue. Okay, now before testing the sprinting, what we need to do now is we need to call this handle sprinting input in the handle all inputs method right there. And also if you click on player manager right here, we will create a late update, remove that code, and we need to move this player movement dot handle or movement in the late update. Okay, and remove it from there. If you don't do this, then your player will not be able to move. Okay, so make sure that you do this change, and right here you call the handle sprinting input in the handle all inputs method and add a semicolon at the end. Then if you get back right here, now if you notice, if we rotate to the left side, as you can see the player face that direction. It doesn't now move in the forward direction, or I mean the player doesn't rotate in the forward direction. Okay, as you can see, we can rotate to any direction we want. And now right here we are moving, and now if we hold the shift button, as you can see the player moves really fast now. Okay, as you can see, and when we remove shift, as you can see it walks slow, and if we press it, it moves fast, as you can see. So it means the sprinting works perfectly fine, and the movement as well. The next thing which we will be needing is the animations. So as I told you, we will be adding animations in this video, but since this video becomes really lengthy, so we'll just gonna end this right here, and in the next video we're just gonna simply add the animations. So see you guys in the next one.